will now move to the next issue, proposed State of Ohio Issue 2, Anti-Monopoly Amendment to protect the initiative process from being used for personal economic benefit. From the ballot language, Anti-Monopoly Amendment protects the initiative process from being used for personal economic benefit. Proposed constitutional amendment proposed by the joint resolution of the General Assembly. Proposed to amend Section 1E of Article 2 of the Constitution of the State of Ohio. A majority yes vote is necessary for the amendment to pass. The proposed amendment would prohibit any petitioner from using the Ohio Constitution to grant a monopoly, oligopoly, or cartel for their exclusive financial benefit or to establish a preferential tax status. Prohibit any petitioner from using the Ohio Constitution to grant a commercial interest, right, or license that is not available to similarly situated persons or non-public entities. Require the bipartisan Ohio Ballot Board to determine if a proposed constitutional amendment violates the prohibitions above, and if it does, present two separate ballot questions to voters. Both ballot questions must be received a majority yes vote before the proposed amendment could take effect. Prohibit from taking effect any proposed constitutional amendment appearing on the November 3rd, 2015 general election ballot that creates a monopoly, oligopoly, or cartel for the sale, distribution, or other use of any federal Schedule I controlled substance. The Ohio Supreme Court has original exclusive jurisdiction in any action related to this proposal. If passed, the amendment will become effective immediately. Shall this amendment be approved? Here tonight, representing the position in favor of Issue 2, we have Margaret Condit. Margaret is a state representative which was appointed to the Ohio House of Representatives on June 8, 2011, to fill a position vacated by the now Senator Bill Conley. She represents the 52nd District, which includes Westchester, Liberty Township, Fairfield Township, and parts of Sharonville in Butler County. Representative Condit worked as a Procter & Gamble manager for 22 years. During her career, Dr. Condit worked in the food, paper, and pharmaceutical divisions, as well as in corporate environmental safety and technical external relations. Her work with P&G provided her with a valuable perspective on the impact of governmental regulations upon innovation and business growth in the free market. Staying active with her community, Representative Condit served as the trustee of Liberty Township from 1998 to 2001 and has been involved in numerous activities with her church, St. Maximilian Kolbe Catholic Parish in Liberty Township, and she has served the board of Catholic Charities of Southwest Ohio and has been a campus minister at NKU and is a jail chaplain for the women incarcerated in the local county jail. She is also a citizen of Merit Badge Counselor for the Dan Beer Council of the Boy Scouts of America and on the board of the Boys and Girls Club of Westchester and Liberty Townships. Please help me welcome Margaret Condit.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether you can hear me or not, but I'll try to project my voice. Is this on at all? No. Okay. All righty. Well, I'm standing on my tiptoes so I can be taller than the podium. Let me give you a little bit of background on issues and how they get on the ballot real quickly. There are two ways that an issue can get on the ballot. One is by the General Assembly passing, both in the House and the Senate, by 60% to approve the language that goes onto the ballot. And that was the case for issue 1 and for issue 2. I'm in the House of Representatives. We needed 60 votes. We got 87 votes. So it was highly bipartisan, this issue 2 was. And I don't know how many votes it got in the Senate, but obviously a lot more than the 60% that they needed. The other way to put an issue on the ballot is by a citizen initiative. And that was created in 1912, so over 100 years ago, that citizens could get together, write ballot language, and gather many, many signatures to put it on the ballot. That's the case for issue 3, which I'll be talking about later. The number of signatures is dependent upon how many people came out to vote for the previous gubernatorial election. So you need 10% of the votes that were cast in the previous gubernatorial election. And that was over 300,000 votes or signatures that they needed. But this one was just passed by the General Assembly, pretty straightforward. And if you were listening to the language or reading it on this great screen up here, it's basically, issue 2 is to protect our Constitution from monopoly interests. I wish we'd had this issue about 10 years ago when the casinos came on board, because that's exactly what they did. They created a monopoly for 4 casinos in the state of Ohio, and there is not much we can do about it because it's in the Constitution. So issue 2, well, the Citizens Initiative was intended to improve the Constitution for the broad public interest and not for any special interests, not for anybody to have maximizing their private return on investment and creating a business monopoly or a cartel. And it's funny that we use that word. When I hear the word cartel, I think of Mexico, but here we are in the state of Ohio having to draft language to say you can't do this here. There are 19 states of our 50 states that have a constitutional provision banning monopolies and cartels. And hopefully the state of Ohio will be state number 20. It basically ensures that our Constitution is not for sale, that it prohibits special interests from amending the Constitution to create a cartel or a monopoly. It prohibits special interests from spending $20 million in TV advertising and buying an amendment to the Constitution that would give them a preferential tax rate or commercial rights to a business. It's not part of the free market. It's just, I think it's bad for Ohio, and that's why it's so important that we need to vote yes on issue 2 to prevent this kind of activity from going on. Our Constitution really is meant to be for the broad public interest, for everybody, for free commerce, fair trade, fair dealing. It's for all individuals and not for the financial profits for a select few. So basically, to end the special deals and special interests, we need to vote yes on issue 2. I've got a 1-minute warning. So I got a question already before, so I'm just going to answer that. Somebody asked, what if issue 2 wins and issue 3 wins? Who wins? Issue 2 wins. So we really need to vote yes on issue 2 and to prevent monopolies and cartels from being established in the state of Ohio. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any. Yes, ma'am.
Why would the marijuana issue, how could it be presented without putting it into the Constitution? Could they have just proposed something? Why did they put it in the Constitution? So that it could not be voted out by the legislature? Why?
That's my guess. I didn't write the language for issue 3. I'm going to be speaking on the no side of issue 3 and the yes side of issue 2. But yeah, if you wanted to legalize marijuana, you could do it in the Ohio Revised Code. Okay, you wouldn't have to change the Constitution to do that. Yes, ma'am.
How does the federal antitrust law implicate the state stuff? I mean, isn't there already the federal antitrust Sherman Act that is supposed to prevent monopolies?
Yeah, they are. That's a very good question, so I'm not sure. I mean, we already have that for the casinos in Ohio.
Okay, so.
I mean, we've got 4 casinos written into our state constitution, and they've been there for a while, and so the federal government hasn't stepped in to overrule that one. Yes, ma'am.
Well, my question is related to the casino, so they must be grandfathered in then because they were approved before.
Right. Right. And issue
Depending on the outcome of
2,
this, so they
yeah,
would be grandfathered in, okay.
yeah. And issue 2 really is written for Schedule 1 drugs. So you can tell it's written for this particular marijuana issue or drug issue, not for casinos. That's water under the bridge. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was wondering, now that we're calling them cartels, and they're one of the problems with the growers that are going to be growing the marijuana is it's only a select few. So if we vote and we pass issue 2, how is that going to affect the business for growing marijuana? Will it make it open to more individuals, or is it still going to be a select few?
If issue 2 passes with a yes, then it trumps issue 3.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How do you deem something to be a monopoly? How would that be, will that go to a board who decides whether, I mean, how would that work?
I'm sure it would end up in the Ohio Supreme Court. Many things that we do in the Ohio House end up in the Ohio Supreme Court, and they interpret the laws that we pass. There was a hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain more about how issue 2 would trump issue 3? Are we assuming that this bipartisan Ohio Ballot Board is automatically going to deem issue 3 a monopoly?
Issue 3, a monopoly. That's my understanding from what the lawyers tell us. I asked, you know, we're surrounded by lawyers. I'm just a chemist, you know? But I have lawyers on speed dial to ask them questions just like this, and that's what I understand. Yes, ma'am.
I think that there's something in, well, we'll get to issue 3 in a minute.
We will.
But isn't there something in there that allows individuals to grow marijuana for their own personal use?
Yes,
small
there-
quantities?
Right, there is.
So if issue 3 passed and issue 2 passed, I guess there wouldn't be able to be monopolies growing marijuana, but would I be able to grow some in my backyard?
That's a great question, and I'll have to text my lawyer, you know, that I have on speed dial and ask him that question. Really good question. And I'm sorry that I'm unable to answer that, but I expect that next November, if this doesn't pass, and I've got 1 minute on questions, that there will be other kind of citizens initiatives next November. You know, maybe medical marijuana next November, that sort of thing. We'll see. We live in interesting times. Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible for issue 3 to be sliced in any way, or is it all or nothing?
It's all one bill. It's all one issue. Yeah. You know, otherwise you could just turn it into 5 initiatives, and I've got 30 seconds. Last chance?
Just real quick, I'll ask.
Yes, ma'am.
The tax provisions that they put in there, how does that compare to alcohol? I mean, is it the?
You're talking about issue 3 or
Yeah,
issue
well, I
2?
guess maybe I am.
And I don't know the
We'll
answer to
wait
the
till we
question
get to-
either. So, and now I've got 15 seconds. Thank you so much. I'll be back up in a minute. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Now we'll have Elizabeth Brown, who's here to speak in opposition to State Issue 2. Elizabeth is a longtime member of the League of Women Voters. She is serving in the role of Vice President for Program and is an active participant with the League Speakers Bureau. She has a JD from Boston College Law School. She recently retired as the Executive Director of Housing Opportunities Made Equal and currently serves on the board of Affordable Housing Initiative. Please help me welcome Elizabeth Brown.
Thank you. Let me talk a little bit about the opponents to issue 2 and the problems that they see with it. one of the big problems is, as Ms. Condit, Dr. Condit explained, it's very difficult to get a citizen initiative onto the ballot. It's not like California, which makes it a lot easier. You have to get, for the marijuana issue, it was 300,000 signatures. It's a very hard thing to do, and the opponents to issue 2 are very worried and concerned about restricting further the citizens' right to put a ballot issue on. This puts into control a ballot. The ballot board would make the decision. If 300,000 citizens of Ohio said they wanted something, this politically appointed ballot board would decide whether or not they thought that the vague language in this constitutional amendment, is there a special interest there or isn't there? And the sense is the citizens are smart enough to know that if 300,000 put the ballot on, if we vote on it and we say we want it, who's to say that this ballot board should say, no, you can't have that. You're not smart. You shouldn't have done that. So the first major objection is that it restricts the citizens' right to an initiative, and that the citizens need to have that right. It's already very restrictive, and we should not restrict it more. The second reason is the vague language. As it was clear, this issue was brought up solely to stop the marijuana issue. They've got the 300,000 signatures. It was on the ballot. The state legislature said, I don't like that. How can we stop it? And they decided they could stop it by putting this additional issue on the ballot. And the language was written quickly, and it's very vague. It is so vague that just this week, the ACLU and Common Cause both came out against this issue, saying, please do not vote for issue 2, that it is so vague that 2 years from now, it could be applied to a lot of other situations that we can't imagine right now, and that this is not the way to write a constitutional amendment, that it's an end run around the marijuana issue, and that it's not good on its face by itself. And I think that although she was pretty clear that it would trump it, some lawyers have said it will, and some say there really is questions about that. You get 2 issues, both passed by the voters at the same election. There really are some legal arguments why it will not trump it. The only thing that you can be absolutely sure of is that it will be in the courts for a long time. So really, those were the main arguments against this issue 2, putting in a constitutional amendment against something that we don't like. We don't like cartels, we don't like monopolies, but at the same time, the long-term impact on our citizens' right to do initiatives against the government or otherwise would be impacted. The legislature could have passed marijuana reform. Matter of fact, medical marijuana bills were brought before the legislature, I understand, almost every year for the last 10 years. And most of the years, they didn't even get one hearing. The politicians don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and that's why it went to the citizens on a citizen petition to get it on the ballot. Okay, questions?
I have a question. How were these farmers or these, whoever's gonna be the growers, how were they selected? How did they get themselves in there to be the providers?
This really is more of an issue 3, but it's hard to separate 2 and 3 because really 2 is about 3, you know. So I'd be glad to address that now if you want. My understanding from some of the folks who are investors in that system is that the opportunity to invest in those farms, to take the risk, you know, that this would pass, you know, and to put some money up front and to take the risk that it would pass was offered to a whole lot of investors in the state. The vast majority that were approached about it declined because they said it was too risky, that it may not pass. And so those that did step up are the ones that ended up being investors in those 10 farms. And it's not 10 people. I mean, each one of the farms is owned by a group of investors.
I can't tell you who knocked on whose doors or anything like that, but I was told that it was offered to a lot of people, and most of them decided it was just too risky. Chris?
Could you speak a little bit more about how this issue too would preclude other tax issues from being put on?
Yeah.
Or in general, how it could be detrimental to the petition process?
Okay. If people went, if the citizens gathered petitions, and remember, it's a lot of signatures. They gathered 300,000 signatures on petitions throughout the state of Ohio. And the language that Desiree read, if you remember, it talked about that anything that, what does it say? A commercial interest, comma, right, or license. And so the ballot board would look at this initiative brought to them and signed by 300,000 citizens of Ohio, and they would decide whether something on there, equated to either a commercial interest for somebody or a right for somebody that wasn't for other people, or was equivalent to some sort of license for a group. It could be a nonprofit group. It could be, any number of groups. It doesn't necessarily have to be commercial. And the concern is, at that point, they'd say, sorry, 300,000 signers, we don't think this should be on the ballot like this. We're going to make the voters say, we're going to say it's a monopoly. We're going to say, voters, this is a monopoly. Do you want this? Check yes. And then they'd have the ballot issue. So it really, it sort of skews the way it's your ability to really get the substance of the issues heard. Other questions, Glenda?
I like the concept of keeping the Constitution clean and for its, original purpose. So could the legislature have written this in a different way that would have protected the initiative process, but yet given us an alternative to the monopolies?
In order to try to stop the marijuana from being legalized, they would have to do it as a constitutional amendment. That's why it was done that. They couldn't just pass a law about it, because then it would not prevent issue 3 from being, being in effect.
Could they have made it a little bit of a cleaner amendment, or something that didn't raise as many concerns, maybe?
I suspect that they could have. They could have drafted language that wasn't deemed by ACLU and Common Cause and a lot of other people to be very vague. I couldn't tell you right now what that language would be, but I think it clearly would have been possible. All right, thank you.